Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 15, which is entitled Parshuram, the Lord's Warrior Incarnation. And today we're reading texts 32 to 40, focusing on 40 and the purport. So I'll read the English text leading up to text 40. By manipulating his axe and arrows, Lord Parshuram cut to pieces the shields, flags, bows, and bodies of Kartavirya Arjuna's soldiers who fell on the battlefield, muddying the ground with their blood. Seeing these reverses, Kartavirya Arjuna, infuriated, rushed to the battlefield. Text 33. Then Kartavirya Arjuna, with his 1,000 arms, simultaneously fixed arrows on 500 bows to kill Lord Parshuram. But Lord Parshuram, the best of fighters, released enough arrows with only one bow to cut to pieces immediately all the arrows and bows in the hands of Kartavirya Arjuna. Text 34. When his arrows were cut to pieces, Kartavirya Arjuna uprooted many trees and hills with his own hands and again rushed strongly towards Lord Parshuram to kill him. But Parshuram then used his axe with great force to cut off Kartavirya Arjuna's arms, just as one might lop off the hoods of a serpent. Text 35 and 36. Thereafter, Parshuram cut off like a mountain peak the head of Kartavirya Arjuna, who had already lost his arms. When Kartavirya Arjuna's 10,000 sons saw their father killed, they all fled in fear. Then Parshuram, having killed the enemy, released the Kamadhenu, which had undergone great suffering, and brought it back with his calf to his residence, where he gave it to his father, Jamadagni. Text 37. Parshuram described to his father and brothers his activities in killing Kartavirya Arjuna. Upon hearing of these deeds, Jamadagni spoke to his son as follows. Text 38. O great hero, my dear son Parshuram, you have unnecessarily killed the king, who is supposed to be the embodiment of all the demigods. Thus you have committed a sin. Text 39. My dear son, we are all Brahmanas and have become worshipable for the people in general because of our quality of forgiveness. It is because of this quality that Lord Brahma, the supreme spiritual master of this universe, has achieved his post. And text 40. So I'll read the Sanskrit here, translation and purport. Chamaya rochate lakshmir brahmi sodi yata prabha chaminam ashu bhagavams tushyate hari ishvara. The duty of a Brahmana is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. Purport: different personalities become beautiful by possessing different qualities. Chanakya Pandit says that the cuckoo bird, although very black, is beautiful because of its sweet voice. Similarly, a woman becomes beautiful by her chastity and faithfulness to her husband. And an ugly person becomes beautiful when he becomes a learned scholar. In the same way, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras become beautiful by their qualities. Brahmanas are beautiful when they are forgiving. Kshatriyas when they are heroic and never retreat from fighting. Vaishyas when they enrich cultural activities and protect cows, and Shudras when they are faithful in the discharge of duties pleasing to their masters. Thus, everyone becomes beautiful by his special qualities, and the special quality of the Brahmana, as described here, is forgiveness. Omagyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitamscha Ye Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So beg for the blessings of the assembled devotees. Adi Purush Prabhu, ask for your blessings that we can say something in line with Guru Parampara for the benefit of everyone hearing, and may this also be for the pleasure of Shri Shri Radha Mulidhar and Srila Prabhupada. Okay. So again, read this verse. This is Canto 9, Chapter 15, entitled Parshuram, the Lord's Warrior Incarnation. Text 40. The duty of a Brahmana is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. So we're hearing about Parshuram and his fight with Kartavirya Arjuna. And Parshuram is an incarnation of the Lord for removing evil elements. So that's the other side of compassion. You know, when we think of the word compassion, we just think of very soft and sweet and kind person, harmless person, right? But there's another side of compassion. Like we see these great kings, they also have Parikshit and so forth. They have compassion, but it's also expressed in a strong way of removing what is evil in order for the purpose of protecting others. So compassion has great power within it as well. A person who can do both, at least we have to be capable of doing both. Otherwise, if we're not capable of showing the stronger side of compassion, then we can also create harm to others by that. And so, therefore, we hear the glorification of Lord Chaitanya. We think of Srila Prabhupada also. We see soft like a rose, and also, when necessary, hard like a thunderbolt. So Parshuram, we're hearing about how he first killed Kartavirya Arjuna's army, and now Kartavirya Arjuna himself is being killed in these verses. This is the plan, the inconceivable plan of the Lord. He kills Kartavirya Arjuna here, cuts off all his arms, cuts off his head. And then he takes the cow that was stolen from his father and he returns this cow to his father, Jamadagni. And as a good Brahmana father, what does his father say after hearing all this? Basically he tells Parshuram that, as Brahmanas, we are Loka Guru. We are capable of guiding the whole world because we have achieved this quality of forgiveness. Because of the quality of forgiveness, we're capable, a Brahmana is actually capable of guiding others because they forgive under all circumstances. So this is Jamadagni, of course, being a good father, he's communicating this to Parshuram. But Parshuram, this was the plan of the Lord to also do this. And so and he's not holding this resentment. This was simply a necessary action. And I want to look at this verse describing forgiveness here. It's described, there are two characteristics in this verse that I'm noticing. It says, Yata Prabha. Forgiveness is illuminating like the sun. The sun has a clearing and a purifying power. And forgiveness also clears and purifies the heart so that we can experience the grace of Krishna. Krishna's grace is omnipresent. It's actually always there, and it's always everywhere. So it's always available. But we ourselves have this wall. We have a barrier that prevents us from experiencing it. And one way of seeing what is that wall, one way of understanding that wall and what it is, an unforgiving heart does not allow Krishna's grace to be experienced. Which is what? What is an unforgiving heart? There's one word: resentment. Resentment doesn't allow the experience of Krishna's grace. It's like forgiveness here is being described as illuminating like the sun. So resentment is like a cloud, many clouds that are covering that sun. But if they're cleared out of the way, then you're in the presence of the sun immediately. You're experiencing that warmth and that light. So Krishna, he's always giving compassion. His energy of grace is everywhere at all times. So we just have to see that we have certain walls that are up. And one of those walls, one big wall, is to not forgive, is to have an unforgiving heart, or to resent, to hold resentment. This word resentment is interesting because, like, we have the word sentiment, resent, sentiment, to feel, and resent means to feel again, but really it means to feel again and again and again. In other words, if you take some strong action, you could just take a strong action that's necessary, even with anger, because it has to be done, almost as duty, and then you let it go. You're finished. It's clear. It's clean. That's fine. You see some of these Kshatriya kings also, they would kill, but they would not hold resentment. They would not think it over in their minds again and again about how much they hated that person. It was simply done and dropped. And here with Parshuram as well, it just looks like, wow, he's just killing and destroying. He had a purpose, a mission, and he just does it. But resenting means to hold on, means to think again and again. Once our mind, say you have some issue, if somebody's harmed you in some way, we have to be patient with ourselves if somebody's harmed us, because it's a process to overcome. It's a process to forgive in a deep way, to truly forgive. So we don't rush that. We have to be patient with ourselves. But at the same time, if you notice, if you're harmed in some way, then we often we start to consider it in our minds. We start to dwell on it. We start to feel it and re-feel it. And that process, what is that process doing? It's actually the thing that we hate in the other person is starting to get inside of us by this process. When you start to, boil inside for something that's happened and contemplate it and dwell in it, you become like what you hate. It starts to get inside of you. And this is what resentment is. So somebody may have done wrong or said something wrong to us and harmed us in some way. And then when we start to think about that and rethink about that, and the thoughts get very busy in our minds, actually this is what's happening to the sons of Kartavirya Arjuna, because they just saw their father get killed. And what's happening for a long time in their minds, they're just thinking revenge. We're going to get this. We're going to get Parshuram. They go back eventually out of revenge to kill Parshuram's father, because their hearts were just boiling because they allowed that process to take place. So to forgive a person really means to let go of the resentment that we have towards them for what they did. And it's so powerful to do this. And it's so clearing, just like it says here, forgiveness is illuminating like the sun. You will clear all the clouds from your heart by this process, and you'll just be standing in the light of Krishna's grace. Actually, Krishna says, I believe it's the 11th canto, he says, Titikshas me, I am forgiveness. So forgiveness is divine. Krishna identifies himself with this quality of forgiveness. He says, I am forgiveness. And another characteristic of forgiveness that's mentioned in this verse, text 40, Bhagavan tushyate, that true forgiveness satisfies the heart of God. So how to do it, how to truly forgive? Because a lot of us, we think we're forgiving people. I always make this point, but every quality that we hear in the scripture has a pseudo form in the material world. So sometimes we think we're doing it, but we're just doing an imitation of it. For example, love. If we're attached to a person, we think I love them. Love is much more powerful than just simply being attached to somebody. Humility. Sometimes we just feel very weak and very low, and we think I'm being humble. But that's not humility either. That's also like a material form of humility. It looks like it. It may look like it. What is real humility? That's what we should ask ourselves. And how do I achieve that? So in the same way, forgiveness, somebody does something to us and we may say with words, I forgive you for that. But inside, if we look very close, we're just trying to get over it. We're just trying to kind of forget about it, move on with my life. But we see there's still this part that, we see that person again. Are we cleared actually? Or do we still hold resentment? Because when that resentment is being held, then forgiveness has not taken place. Whatever we say. So how to truly forgive? That's the question. Because to truly forgive, this verse says it pleases Krishna. Krishna's only pleased with, he's not pleased with mundane, anything mundane. He only interacts with the spiritual energy, Krishna. So he's pleased by spiritual things, by spiritual qualities, by spiritual persons. the material forms and the material interactions, the material qualities, Krishna doesn't so much interact with that because he's spiritual. He's like very refined in how he interacts and who he interacts with. Only the highest. Now he's interacting with all of us, even though we may not be at the highest level because we are souls. So how does he interact with us right now while we're lost in the material world? And he's simply waiting and longing for us to look back towards him. That's the essence of his interaction with us. And then otherwise, we're just entangled in our own karma. And in that sense, he's the creator of these laws and so forth. But that interaction that we truly want, that intimate interaction, he's waiting for us to surrender to him so that we can enter into an intimate relationship where the exchanges are all spiritual. He relishes that. And then he also gives that to his devotee. So forgiveness, the forgiveness that pleases Krishna, as mentioned in this verse, the forgiveness, Krishna says, Titakshami, I am forgiveness. So this is divine forgiveness. Now, how do we do that? How do we achieve that? And I think part of this process is when we're sincere enough to want to see the truth about ourselves, then Krishna can begin to show us, when we're willing to see the truth about me, that actually I'm wrong for resenting. This person may have been wrong for what they did to me, but I'm wrong for resenting them for it. So this doesn't allow evil to be done to me, because I can say, well, that was wrong, what happened to me. I was harmed. This is wrong, what's happening in the world. This is actually wrong. But if I resent, then I'm wrong. And so a devotee will think, well, Krishna, show me where I'm wrong. Let me see it. Let me really see. And let me see how that I have this wall that's up. I'm holding resentment and I don't want to let it go. We have to see that so clearly and ask for Krishna to show us, to shine light on that resentment in our hearts. And of course, when we see that, it can be a little painful, but it's also illuminating. It's clearing away clouds and coming in touch with reality. And actually, we're not just resenting, a few people here and there. Resentment is very deep. It's almost like an attitude that we're always carrying around. But let me see that, Krishna. Let me see how that's true of me. I remember I was reading this book, this old Christian book by this author. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Vasudeva Prabhu could help me out, but Jacob Burma, I think is how you say it. But he's from like the 16th century. And he wrote very kind of heavy Christian language, lots of things about Satan getting inside of you and hell. And it's kind of this very strong language. And he reflects in one place about this spirit of evil that's gotten inside of all of us. And he's describing in that way. And I just put the book down at some point and I just like closed my eyes and I thought, is that true? Let me just like go into my heart for a moment and see what's there. I tried to become very quiet and still. And say, Krishna, let me really see what's in there. And then I started to get a little glimpse that there was like this, I felt like there's this thing inside of me, like this, that's angry, that has resentment, that has lust, that's jealous of others. I was like kind of like entering into it because it's there and we cover it and we kind of hide it a little and we're all acting like ordinary people. But if you allow this if you really want to see, then I started to see and I started to feel it too. I started to feel there's this abominable, like dark person in there actually, okay, let me go further. Let me not just look away and forget about it. Let me see what else is there. And I realized all these things of selfishness and envy, the willingness to want to look at it, and then you'll see it. Wow, I'm in this state. This is what's going on inside of me. And we know on a deeper level, we're none of that. We're spiritual beings, but we still have to get to the spiritual being. We still have to get through this thing, this thing that's inside of all of us, this thing that is waiting for an opportunity to resent people. It's not that somebody caused our resentment. Resentment is in there, and this person from their activities awakens it within me, but it's there. Anger. It's not like this person caused my anger. I'm angry, but I can get along and kind of, as long as nobody messes with me, I just keep living. Everything's going smooth in my life. But then suddenly this person does something, and then the anger comes out, but it comes out of me because it's there. So I'm going into this little bit darker place to show how to truly forgive, because forgiveness means to let go of the resentment. Right? So when we see that I'm actually holding resentment, I'm in the wrong. And it's not like, again, you don't wallow in the guilt of it either. You're just like, wow, this is really what's going on. Like when I saw this thing within myself, it was just very dark and abominable and selfish. I wasn't feeling guilty, actually. I was just thinking, wow, that's what's in me? Krishna, please help me. That now I see what the problem is. Help me remove this. Let me let this go. Only by your mercy, Krishna, can this come out of me. Only by your grace. So interestingly, it's not that we see the instruction here to forgive, and then we try to do it. It's not by trying harder to forgive. Oh, let me try a little harder. Let me do a little more. Let me do more service. Let me do more rounds. That's all good if it's done in the right way also, but it's not so much trying harder to forgive, but it's seeing that I have an unforgiving heart and asking Krishna, surrendering to Krishna so that he takes it away. Surrender does it. It's not you developing the quality of forgiveness. I'm going to develop it. I'm going to try a little harder. Oh, I hate this person, but I'm going to go and forgive them. If you notice it doesn't work, you still hold resentment. But if you surrender to Krishna, seeing that we're in the wrong, seeing that we have resentment in the heart, and we come to this place of, wow, this is there in me, but I want to let it go, and I long to be my true self, and only Krishna, only you can do this. Therefore, I serve and I hear and I chant, keeping all of this in mind, that there's this big block within myself that I'm holding it up. And now I want to let it go, but I can't let it go. But Krishna, you can let it go. So I surrender to you. I surrender. That, if we keep repeating that process, then we'll see that the resentment sometimes it's not gradual either. Sometimes it can be just by Krishna's grace, it can just be gone. Resentment can just be gone from the heart. And then you realize that these are all my brothers and sisters. I actually love everybody. Even if they do harm, I can also see they're just in that same state I'm in, where that dark thing, that dark being inside of me is also inside of them, and they don't know. So they're harming others and getting harmed as well. But because now I know the truth that I've discovered within myself, that I have it, others have it, then I just love. Love, it means I just see with the eyes of love. Doesn't mean I love when I see harm being done, but it means that I understand. They can't help it, just like I can't help it. But if they surrender, Krishna will take it away. If I surrender, Krishna will take it away. Because this resentment is actually resentment towards God that we're holding. This state of resentment that we're in, we're resenting God. Why? Because, when things don't go our way, we're angry. When, we're frustrated. We're frustrated for the way things are. And who makes things the way things are? That's Krishna, right? So when things don't go my way, when I'm upset, when I'm angry, when I'm sad, when I'm all of this is it's us being a little bit upset at the creation, at the way things are. But the way things are, the way Krishna has arranged them. So if you look deeply, you see that this is why surrender takes care of the problem, because it's finally admitting, Krishna, I resent you. I resent the way things are. And I see that now. And now I want to take that out of my heart. Please, I surrender to you. Please remove it. And then when that is actually accomplished, then resentment, the clouds of resentment move out. And it's the sun. Krishna is the sun, actually. Krishna, you know, as Prabhupada liked to quote this verse, that Krishna is the sun and Maya is darkness. And as soon as you come in the presence of the sun, the darkness is gone. So as soon as the darkness of resentment is gone from the heart, then you're in the light of Krishna, Krishna consciousness. And then as you look at people in this world, you know, you see hate going on and then you hate it. You see, that's the problem that we have. Then we hate it. Then that enters into us. What we hate enters into us because we're dwelling in it, we're getting into it, we're feeling it, we're resenting it. And then it enters into us, and then we're just in the same place. We feel ourselves superior for pointing out what's wrong in the world, but we don't realize we're also wrong. And so when we see that this is what's happening for everybody, then we understand that the real solution to this, the real way to forgive in a divine way, is that we beg for Krishna to show us the truth of what's really happening inside of us, and then we'll see that there's resentment, there's anger, there's lust, there's greed. And now I'm not going to get busy trying to figure this all out and remove each thing, one thing at a time, and just get into it and process all of it. And it's not so much like that. If you can just know that you're in this state of resentment, and all the other bad habits we have been picked up because of it, then, like Prabhupada says in some places, even with one stroke, the one stroke of surrender, then the heart can be purified and one can see with new eyes. And then it's not like, we may still fall back sometimes and struggle, and the mind can trick us and we go back into illusions and so forth. But that experience of Krishna's grace will change us forever. And then we're really on our way. So I was reading this recently also. Prabhupada was glorifying Parikshit Maharaj. And it's mentioned that he had all good qualities, but most important, he was Mahabhagavat. And therefore, in the purport, Prabhupada was explaining that, we have to try to develop good qualities, but it never really, the divine form of that quality never awakens from our trying to develop it. But by surrendering to the Lord, then all the good qualities manifest. Because that's the big block that we have in our heart, is resentment towards God. And when we want to see it, we'll see it. If we really want to look at it, we'll see that it's there and it's not theoretical. And then our service, our life, our practice becomes, Krishna, I know this is there only by your grace, therefore I surrender to you. And again, doing that and living that way, bring that into your chanting, bring that into your service, that consciousness. And then the clouds begin to move and you start to experience more and more the reality of Krishna's grace and love. Krishna's nature is forgiveness. It's not that he's looking down at us. He's thinking, okay, that one I'm going to forgive because they did so-and-so. That one I'm not going to forgive right now. They're not quite ready. The only thing that comes from him is forgiveness. His nature is forgiveness, but we have blocks. We have resentment. We have a wall that doesn't allow us to experience his absolute eternal forgiveness. And so we shouldn't think, and we feel guilty sometimes. Krishna's, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve that. That's all a game of playing with ourselves in our own mind. Krishna's nature is absolute forgiveness, absolute compassion. We play a game in our own minds and think that, like, I'm undeserving, and no matter what you've done, no matter what's been done, if we can see what surrender really means and be willing to take that step again and again to gradually enter the process of surrender to God. If we can do that, then we'll see the reality of Krishna's compassionate nature, which is eternally just flowing to all living beings. We just have to accept it. We have to accept him and stop resenting. So I will conclude here. This verse, again, is text 40, and it's glorifying the quality of forgiveness. And so I talk about this topic a lot because of the work I do, because I work with people who are passing away. And often the block that comes up, the regret that's there before they pass away, is somehow it's connected to forgiveness often. That they haven't forgiven somebody, or there's a relationship, it's not cleared, and therefore there's some regret, and people die with that regret. And so that's why it's an important topic for us, and to see it on a deeper level also. It's not just like regret, it's not just resentment towards this or that person. We have to take care of that also on that level, but to see it in a more cosmic sense, that actually this is what's separating me from Krishna. Yeah. So I'll stop there.
Hare Krishna, Ghanashyam Prabhu. Wonderful presentation. Just a quick question. Is there a pastime or a shloka in the Gita or Bhagavatam that is describing how this resentment is not coming from this person or that person, but it's already stored in me and just being provoked by a situation? Is there anything in particular that we can meditate on or even learn by heart?
Yeah, there are, I can't think of a verse that directly states it in that way. But if you look in the 5th canto with Rishabdev, when he's talking about the nature of the mind, and he says, what's in that mind? What is the nature of the mind? He says it's the reservoir of greed, of envy, of anger, of grief, And so, in a sense, many verses are showing us that point, that if this is what the nature of the mind is, I have this mind, this is what's inside on the surface, it's like we're just nice with people and we try to be respectful, stay in our own lane, right? And everyone's kind of going a little deeper. There's this darkness, and then going deeper than the darkness is the light, is the soul, right? But to get to that light, that truth, then we also have to be willing to see the darkness that's there, and we'll see it if we want to see it. If we ask Krishna, show me, like I was describing, I was reading this book about this, and I just put it down, and I spent about, must have been about 45 minutes just going in to what was there and asking Krishna, show me more, show me more. And then I was shocked at what I saw, and realizing that, this is the problem. This is the problem of every living entity, and most of us don't want to look at it and face it. And then we project the problem outside of ourselves, and we all fight externally. We don't realize if everybody was to do this spiritual work and then be willing to let go and surrender to the Lord, then we'd have peace on earth. So sorry, I went off into another direction. But yeah, I think if with this lens, you'll see it's actually everywhere, because it's always talking about the nature of the mind, and the Gita is talking about kama, right? Lust that's in there. And so in a sense, it's found everywhere indirectly, but I'll think about it a more direct first, see if I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
Ghanashyam Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, Hari Purush Prabhu.
Yeah, wonderful class. Very, very important subject matter. And some of the things Srila Prabhupada says about it, if someone offends me, that's their ignorance. But if I take it as an offense, that's my ignorance. That's one thing. Another thing is, we cannot forgive without Krishna's help. You made a really, really good point there. Then I can't do it without. And then there's an idea of perception. And you touched on this a little bit too, very nicely, that actually, if this person is doing something horrible, something, not pleasing to Krishna, there's different ways we can perceive that. If we understand that this person is going to suffer for what they're doing, then we won't respond with anger or resentment. We'll feel sorry for them because look what they're doing. This is going to come back to them and bite them on the butt, and they're going to be very sorry, right? So we feel sorry, not just we give up resentment, but we feel compassion. And that helps us forgive because we're seeing things as it is. And just one more thing. Everything is coming from Krishna. Prabhupada explains that. It's not coming from this person. It appears to be coming from this person. But this is actually Krishna's arrangement. This is actually Krishna's perfect arrangement, helping me to learn and grow, testing me, teaching me, guiding me. And if I don't respond appropriately to this thing that looks like somebody's doing bad to me, then that test is going to come again and again until we learn, actually, I deserve a lot worse. Let me go on in devotional service. Let me thank Krishna for this and ask how can I serve in this condition. We have to go move the vehicle and everything. So
thank you, Adipush. Great points.
Class. Wonderful class.
You say your prayers now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if someone does become an instrument of harming others in this world, then they will have to suffer the reaction, like as Adipush Prabhu was saying. So, it's not that so somebody does something wrong. It's not that we think, well, it's got nothing to do with them. They're not responsible. No, they are responsible. They've somehow allowed themselves to become an instrument of pain, of harm, and therefore reactions will come to them because of that. But as Adipush was saying, if you're actually seeing in this way, it's possible to, even when a person is doing harm to someone else, it's actually possible to see it with the eyes of compassion, like, wow, this person is so lost that they're just harming others, and then therefore there's impossible for happiness to be in the heart, and there'll be reactions that come from this. But once we resent that person, and once we hate that person for doing that, and we want to fight against them, then that thing that we hate in them is entering into us by that process of resenting. Soon as you resent, you're starting this process. And again, resent means to feel it again and again, to dwell in it, to enter into it. And then it gets inside of you. And then what did you do? You just added more fuel to this anger in your own heart. And we can hide it very nicely and cover it, but actually that's what we're doing. We're fueling it. But if we say, Krishna, show me truly what's happening inside of me. Let me keep my eyes on myself. Oh my God, how necessary is surrender to God to overcome these things. And we want it more and more when we see just the condition that we're in, we'll want it, we'll long for it more and more. And that's where we want to be. Krishna is very pleased with that longing, and he reciprocates with that longing, and he'll start to show his light in our lives. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments, or questions?
Haribo, Ghanashyam.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, this is Bhima Das from Boston. How are you doing, Prabhu?
Jai, great to hear from you, Prabhu.
Wonderful class, unbelievable. I can't wait to take birth again as a devotee and as a real devotee, and actually know things and be able to share them with others. I'm out in the field right now, so we might get broken up. I get to share with the animals, which is a wonderful thing. But I think what you guys are doing, this whole Bhagavatam discussion, is wonderful because people get to speak their hearts. And when we share our hearts, we also share how alike we are. And in that point, I just wanted to say, what is your thoughts? Like, since you brought up Christianity, the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So immediately we have a bona fide prayer here. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. So could you comment on self-will versus surrender. People say, well, how do I surrender? Do I do more? Do I do more service? Or somebody just, kind of affronted me, but I'm just going to let it slide off my back. And versus just this idea in as much as allowing Krishna to do his will through us. So that's sort of the surrender. So do you have any comments, or can you
Beautiful.
elaborate on that point? Yeah.
So great to hear from you, Prabhu. I'm just remembering you and just appreciating you so much, and bringing back some very beautiful memories and experiences. But it's a great question, and it's a great point that you yourself shared. Self-will, it's this is, the original turning away from Krishna. What's the idea? The in the Greek mythology, they have, this Narcissus, who is this, kind of falls away, and by looking into a mirror, he kind of falls in love with himself, becomes self-absorbed, kind of forgets the reality that's around him, because very absorbed. And so our fall is something similar to this, where we get and that also manifests as like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to figure this out, right? Even as in spiritual life, that attitude enters in, that I'll do it. Actually, you can't perform the pure devotional service. Pure devotional service is an energy of the Lord, and you can open yourself up to it, and it comes into you, and then you can do it. So it's not that like by an effort of my will that I can like, I can somehow develop it or like do it. Right now, I'm going to do pure devotion. That doesn't work. We have material consciousness. But if we realize that I can't do it, and then the idea of surrendering to God, Krishna, you work through me, as you mentioned. Please let your divine energy shine the light of your divine energy into the darkness of my heart, and utilize me in your service. Use me in your service. That's what this was, a servant is being all about, is that from the surrender, once we kind of hit that 0 point, we think we're something right now. We think we're something special, or we think we're something bad. They're both illusions. We think I'm so bad I can't do anything. That's also a trick of Maya. But if we just see the reality that I'm kind of like, I'm just nothing in a sense, I'm just controlled by the material energy, but now I see it by your grace, Krishna. I see how I'm controlled, and I think I'm making decisions, and I'm doing all these things, my willpower, and I'm going to get this done. We don't realize it's the modes of nature within us, and kind of acting and pushing us in different directions. But if we see that that's what's happening, and then our choice is, which energy do I want to be under? The material energy or the spiritual energy? And I'm that being that has choice between those two. This is the Tatashta Shakti of the living entity. It means he's on the border of matter and spirit. And the border means you're on the border of that choice that you have. Those are the two real big choices, under this energy or under the divine energy. Now I surrender to the divine energy. Krishna, use me. And so it's really a realization and a surrender that has to take place. So of course, we're also encouraged to do so many things and to perform service. And we have to do that. We're linked to the order of the spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada. And that way there's a protection, but we also have to see it in the right way. Not that I'm going to accomplish this thing called pure devotional service, but I'm going to do it very humbly, knowing that actually I have no chance to manifest it in a pure form, but I'm still going to do it. But I do it with this longing in my heart that Krishna allows his bhakti shakti, his pure spiritual energy to enter into my heart. And then the service becomes spontaneous because it's in me. I hope that was helpful in some way, just my thoughts that came from that question, but it's a great question.
You filled it out nicely. Thank you, Prabhu. I'm so happy to hear from you again, and I can't wait to hear another class, or perhaps one day I'll swing down there and give you a big hug.
That'd be amazing.
Crack your back.
Love you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, love you too.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we have a few minutes left if anybody has anything they'd like to share.
Completely amazing class, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Gail, so nice to hear from you.
Yeah, so practical, so illuminating, just really amazing. I just want to listen to it again and again until I memorize every word that you said.
Appreciate your encouragement. Like I said, I think about this and hear about this topic a lot because of people that are passing away. Often this is the issue that comes up, that forgiveness was lacking and then there's a regret in the heart. And so what we can take away from that is that let's not wait to that moment where there's this block, because it's a block from God, So, and people, and even like think about relationships in your life and forgive people by seeing it in the right light. And that will also open up your relationship more and more with Krishna, because these little blocks of resentment towards people are also blocking the reality of this bigger resentment in the heart. So it's almost showing us that, wow, I really have this deeper resentment. And now how do I let go of that? And that is when you're in relation to the Supreme, to Krishna. And when that is done, then you're just in the light of Krishna's compassion. And then you become an instrument for Krishna's compassion in the world. Sorry, Gail, I don't know if you had a question. I just
No, I didn't. But I also, I'm so happy that you said, what you just said. But I also wanted to say that what was particularly striking also was when you said, we don't really have the capacity to forgive by our own strength or by pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps type thing,
Right.
It's, that was like kind of, I never heard that before.
Yeah, and everything is like that. Like we don't have the capacity to truly be humble. We don't have the capacity to truly love. We do our best for the being in the state that we're in. But if you notice, like when we talk about forgiveness in this world, it basically means you just try to go to someone. I mean, there are moments when one can feel this letting go, and there's like there is a kind of a small wall that goes down, and we'll feel it as very powerful and beautiful and transforming. So those little moments, but for that to really have the eyes of forgiving all living beings, always, to never hold resentment, to come to that consciousness and that state, which is divine forgiveness, which is the forgiveness that Krishna identifies with when he says, I am forgiveness. He's not anything material. He's this completely pure, total, spiritual being, right? So we can do something. We have to try at the same time, so the attitude shouldn't be, well, then forget it. It's like we do our best and we see, and sometimes we get little breakthroughs. But to live in a state of forgiving all living beings, whatever you see, I mean, that's really special. That's really wonderful. And that comes when we surrender to Krishna and he allows for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the more, you kind of meditate on forgiveness, the more you kind of realize that there's a part of you that's kind of holding on to not forgiving.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because you feel like, by forgiving, you're kind of letting the person off the hook for something wrong, that they did. And maybe that's the reason for not wanting to even truly forgive,
Yeah. We have to look in there and see what's happening. What is my motive for not wanting to let this go?
Mm-hmm.
And, we see, because then we have to also admit, like, we have to admit, we have to see that actually I'm wrong for holding on to this. And that's also uncomfortable. Hey, wait, this person did wrong. How am I wrong? Right?
You're right. Exactly.
It's like, wait a minute. Wow. I was hurt. How am I the one who's wrong? Mm-hmm. You're only wrong if you decide to hold on to that resentment. because, you know, okay, this person did wrong, but I'm wrong for resenting. And to really see that and face that, it's totally off the other person now. It's all about me and owning up to what I see. And then that takes some courage to look in there. And so we want to like not, we want to pretend like it's, yeah, you know, it's not about me. And so it is hard to look, but actually it's a little, we're scared to do that. And we have all these fears because we, you know, we think that, you know, then this is my real situation and this is really awful to deal with, but it's behind that darkness and that resenting heart is a soul that is in us that holds no resentment. So, but you have to go through that. You have to go through that darker part that wants to deny our own responsibility for you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can just build up that courage and we all know anyway, right? If we were really honest and we look in our hearts, we see all these things, and we also know they're in the hearts of others. And then, but we want to be instruments of Krishna's compassion. We want to first overcome things ourselves and help others do the same and really experience the truth of the soul and live from the soul.
You know, just one last thing, you know, I think another obstacle to being forgiving in a situation where the other person was obviously wrong is that you get so much empathy from other people who would like kind of cheer you on in your unforgiving, you know, state,
Right,
because
right.
they also would react the same way. And so you get a lot of encouragement. You know, so to forgive is like kind of going against the tide.
Yeah, you get sympathy, right? You tell your story to somebody, oh, this has happened to me. Oh, that's so sorry. And then you feel comfort from that. Right? You feel that comfort, but we're denying our own true situation and our own responsibility. And you know, I want to just end with one last thing. And the way you can forgive somebody in practical steps is that if, say, somebody has done something to hurt you, say somebody has harmed you, so you're not forgiving the harm that they did. You can go up to them and say, like, what you did was wrong, but I realize I'm wrong for resenting you, so I forgive you. So I'm sorry for resenting you. That's all. And that way you're dropping resentment and their reaction doesn't matter. If they say, hey, what do you mean I was wrong? You know, they want to fight, you don't care. You're letting go of resentment from your own heart. Or if they just maybe they take it very humbly and appreciate that, and they also forgive you or whatever may happen. So when that conversation should take place, you shouldn't just be in your own like mind and heart and try to figure this out. Go to the person, say that, you know, what you did was wrong, but I realize I've been holding resentment towards you all this time, and I'm wrong for that. So I want to let it go. And therefore I forgive you. I realize you couldn't help it. Just like I can't help myself sometimes, I realize you can't also. So I want to let go of that resentment that I've been holding towards you. And I'm sorry.
I mean, shouldn't that mostly happen? I mean, why does it really have to happen by your going to the person? Shouldn't that be like an internal dialogue?
No, it's best if you can go to the person, because you'll see the fears that come up. And because it's to confront a person like that, you know, you also do something powerful for that person, even if they can't receive it right in that moment. You know, they're seeing something, they're seeing an example, they're seeing something that kind of is very striking and maybe disturbing to them even. But it's not that if you have the opportunity to directly go to the person and say it, that should always be the first choice. And if that person is gone or maybe he's passed away, you still can do it internally. But the best is, because you'll see the fear that comes up, you'll see the mind that says, don't do it, it's too difficult, stay away from it, just figure it out yourself. That's a kind of escape, because the confrontation with the person and really putting it out there with words and interaction and seeing the face, that can be really transforming. That will really make the whole experience more real and genuine in a sense, because you're going to accept whatever consequences come. Now, we can be very tricky in our own minds, you know, when we try to do it ourselves in our minds and oh, I've done it, I've forgiven, right? But it's like, go to the person, have this conversation, see what comes out of it, accept whatever consequences come, accept whatever reaction comes.
But before you go to the person, I would think you have to really first genuinely feel like
Yes.
you have forgiven the person.
Yes, you got to get there. So start with self-reflection and what's actually happening. But then if you have an opportunity, go to the person and do it. And then you'll see those two things combined are transforming, are life transforming.
Wait, which
So
two things?
your own reflection, as you're mentioning, like you said, maybe you have to really get to that place first within your own heart. And then, but don't leave it at that. If that person is there and you're able to go to them and also have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Okay.
friends, I have to run to work, but
Yeah.
grateful for this opportunity. Today's the arrival, I believe, of Srila Prabhupada. So he is like the, in the West, he is, we can see the living instrument of compassion and forgiveness. And he would be very strong sometimes too and do whatever is necessary, but holding no resentment towards others, not holding on to things and to resentment, but doing what's needed and necessary, acting strongly, acting lovingly, and just in that mode of just service to the Supreme Lord, a perfect, clean instrument of service. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Ghanashyam Prabhu. Thanks everyone for coming on. We'll see you tomorrow for another day in Krishna consciousness.